The gunshot cracked through the marble lobby like thunder, and Ethan Ward didn't think. He just moved. One second he was mopping floors in his janitor's uniform. The next he was diving in front of Isabella Grant, the pregnant billionaire CEO who'd never even noticed he existed. Blood bloomed across his shoulder as they crashed behind the reception desk together. "Why?" she gasped, pressing her hands against his wound. He looked at her swollen belly, then into her terrified eyes. "Because I'm a father too," he whispered, "and I know what it's like to lose everything." Welcome to a story that changed 2 lives forever. Stick with me till the end and drop a comment about which city you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. The maintenance cart squeaked down the 43rd floor of the Nexus Tower, its wheels marking time against the polished marble like a metronome of invisibility. Ethan Ward pushed it with practiced efficiency, his reflection ghosting across the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Manhattan's glittering skyline. At 34, he had the kind of face that had once turned heads in MIT lecture halls. Sharp jawline softened by laugh lines that hadn't deepened in years, eyes the color of storm clouds that held equations instead of dreams. "Dad, why do you have to work tonight?" The memory of his 7-year-old son, Marcus's voice from that morning, played in his mind like a broken record. "It's Friday. Everyone else's dad is home on Friday nights." Ethan had knelt down, straightening Marcus's school tie with fingers that once designed AI systems worth millions. "Because superheroes work when everyone else is sleeping, buddy. Someone's got to keep the buildings clean for when the important people come back Monday morning." "But you're important too," Marcus had insisted, his mother's stubborn chin jutting out in defiance. "Different kind of important," Ethan had replied, kissing his forehead before sending him off to Mrs. Chen next door, the elderly neighbor who watched Marcus for less than minimum wage because she knew what it was like to struggle alone. Now, 10 hours into his shift, Ethan methodically worked his way through the executive floor. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was cleaning offices he might have occupied in another life. A life before Sarah's cancer, before the medical bills that devoured their savings, before her death left him drowning in debt with a 3-year-old who needed him more than any algorithm ever would. The Nexus Corporation sprawled across the top 15 floors of the building, its logo, an infinity symbol wrapped around a globe, gleaming from every surface like a promise of endless possibility, for everyone except the invisible army that kept it running after dark. "Ward, you missed a spot!" Victor Reeves's voice cut through the silence like a blade. The night security supervisor stood in the doorway of the break room, his uniform stretched tight across a belly that spoke of too many free donuts from the lobby coffee shop. "Conference room 12, the big presentation's tomorrow morning. Ms. Grant wants it spotless. Isabella Grant." Even her name carried weight in these halls. 29 years old, 7 months pregnant, and running a tech empire her father built from nothing. Ethan had seen her exactly 3 times in his 2 years working here. Always from a distance, always surrounded by a constellation of assistants and executives who orbited her like planets around a sun. "On it," Ethan replied, not bothering to mention he'd already cleaned conference room 12 twice tonight. Victor liked to exercise what little power he had, especially over someone who clearly didn't belong in a janitor's uniform. He wheeled his cart toward the conference room, passing walls lined with awards and magazine covers, featuring Isabella's face. Forbes' 30 Under 30, Time's Future of Tech, Business Insider's The Billionaire Who Could Save Silicon Valley. Each headline a reminder of the stratosphere he'd fallen from. The conference room was indeed spotless, but Ethan went through the motions anyway. As he wiped down the smart board for the 3rd time, his hand brushed against a folder someone had left behind. Financial projections for something called Project Mercury. The numbers made him pause. They were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The kind of wrong that could sink the entire company if they based their next quarter's strategy on these calculations. His fingers itched for a pen. It would take him 30 seconds to fix the error, to adjust the algorithm they were using. But that wasn't his job anymore. His job was to be invisible, to clean up other people's messes without leaving a trace of himself behind. "Working late again, I see." Ethan spun around, nearly knocking over his bucket. Isabella Grant stood in the doorway, one hand resting on her prominent belly, the other holding a tablet that glowed in the semi-darkness. Up close, She was somehow both more and less intimidating than her photos suggested. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and there were shadows under her green eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Miss Grant?" he managed, immediately dropping his gaze to the floor. "I'm sorry. I'll get out of your way." "No, please, finish what you're doing." She moved into the room with surprising grace for someone so heavily pregnant, settling into one of the ergonomic chairs with a soft sigh. "I couldn't sleep anyway. This little one seems to think 3 a.m. is party time." She patted her belly with a tired smile that transformed her face from corporate warrior to something infinitely more human. Ethan continued cleaning, hyper-aware of her presence. She was scrolling through her tablet, occasionally frowning at something on the screen. Every few minutes, she'd shift uncomfortably, her hand going to her lower back. "Can I get you anything?" The words escaped before he could stop them. "Water? Or there's a heating pad in the supply closet that might help with your back." She looked up, surprise flickering across her features. "How did you know my back was hurting?" "My wife. When she was pregnant with our son, she used to make that same movement. Said it felt like someone was using her spine as a xylophone." The memory slipped out unexpectedly, bringing with it the familiar ache that lived just behind his ribs. "Was?" Isabella's voice softened, catching the past tense. "Cancer. 4 years ago." Ethan focused on wiping down the table, the circular motions giving his hands something to do besides shake. "But the heating pad really did help. That's kind." She studied him with an intensity that made him want to disappear into the walls. "I'm sorry about your wife. That must have been incredibly difficult, especially with a child." "We manage." It came out more curtly than he intended, the walls he'd built around his grief standing firm against even kindness. Isabella nodded, seeming to understand the boundary. She returned to her tablet, but Ethan could feel her occasional glances as he worked. When he reached for the folder of financial projections, her voice stopped him. "Leave it. That's tomorrow's headache." She rubbed her temples. "Sometimes I think these numbers are actively trying to give me a migraine. We're hemorrhaging money on Project Mercury, but no one can figure out where the leak is. My CFO swears the math is solid, but something feels off." Ethan's hand hovered over the folder. Every instinct screamed at him to keep his mouth shut, to finish cleaning and disappear back into the shadows where he belonged. But the error was so glaring, so fixable, and she looked so exhausted. "Your discount rate assumption is wrong," he heard himself say. The silence that followed felt like falling off a cliff. Isabella's head snapped up, her eyes sharp despite the late hour. "Excuse me?" There was no going back now. Ethan pulled the folder toward him, grabbing a pencil from the table. "Your team is using a flat discount rate across all market segments, but you're dealing with emerging markets in Southeast Asia. The risk premium should be adjusted by at least 3%, and you need to factor in currency fluctuation. Here," he quickly sketched out the corrected formula on a blank sheet. "If you run the numbers this way, you'll see the leak isn't in operations. It's in your hedging strategy." Isabella stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. She snatched the paper from his hands, her eyes racing across his calculations. Who are you?" "Nobody," Ethan said quickly, already backing toward his cart. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "Stop." It wasn't a request. Isabella pulled out her phone, took a photo of his calculations, and fired it off in a text. Within seconds, her phone rang. "I know it's 3 a.m., David," she said to whoever was on the other end. "Look at what I just sent you." "Yes, now." A pause. "That's what I thought. Emergency meeting, 7 a.m. sharp. And David, find out everything you can about our hedging strategy in Singapore." She ended the call and fixed Ethan with a look that made him feel like a butterfly pinned to a board. "You just potentially saved us $40 million with a pencil and 30 seconds of math. So I'll ask you again. Who are you?" "Ethan Ward. I clean your offices." "No," she said slowly. "People who clean offices don't spot sophisticated financial modeling errors at a glance." Try again. He could lie. Make up something about community college courses or online tutorials. But something about the way she was looking at him, not with pity or condescension, but with genuine curiosity, made the truth tumble out. MIT, class of 2013. Master's in Systems Engineering with a focus on financial AI. I used to work for Prometheus Tech before they went under. Isabella's eyebrows shot up. Prometheus? You were part of the team that developed the Apollo trading algorithm? I led the team, Ethan admitted, the words tasting like dust in his mouth. Ancient history now. Ancient history that's still being taught in business schools as one of the most innovative financial AI systems ever created. She tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. What happened? Life, Ethan said simply, gripping the handle of his mop like an anchor. Medical bills happened. Choosing between keeping a roof over my son's head and keeping my dignity happened. This job has health insurance and steady hours. That's all that matters now. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, her hand unconsciously moving to her belly. Your son. How old is he? 7. His name's Marcus. Despite himself, Ethan smiled. Smart as a whip, wants to be an astronaut on Mondays, a dinosaur hunter on Tuesdays, and a chef by Friday. Sounds like he inherited his father's brain. Isabella moved closer, and Ethan caught a whiff of her perfume, something expensive and subtle that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Mr. Ward, Ethan, I'd like to make you an offer. I don't need charity. Good, because I don't give it. Her tone turned businesslike, the CEO emerging from behind the exhausted, pregnant woman. I need someone who can spot a $40 million error in 30 seconds. Someone who understands both the technical and financial sides of what we do here. The position of senior financial systems analyst just opened up. It pays $150 to start, full benefits, flexible hours for family obligations. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. $150,000, more than triple what he made now. Enough to get a better apartment, send Marcus to a good school, maybe even start saving for college. Why? The word came out rough. You don't even know me. I know you created Apollo. I know you chose your son over your career when life got hard. And I know you could have walked past that folder tonight, but you didn't. She pulled out a business card, pressing it into his hand. I built this company by trusting my instincts about people. My instincts are screaming that letting you walk out of here with that mop would be the stupidest thing I could do. Before Ethan could respond, the fire alarm erupted. Not the polite, measured tone of a drill, but the full-throated scream of genuine emergency. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. We need to evacuate, Ethan said, his mind immediately shifting into crisis mode. But as they reached the door, smoke was already seeping underneath, thick and black. The stairs, Isabella started, will be packed. There's a service elevator in the back that goes straight to the parking garage. Maintenance staff only. Ethan grabbed his cart, using it to prop the door open slightly. The hallway was filling with smoke fast. Stay low, cover your mouth with this. He handed her a damp cleaning cloth from his bucket. They moved through the smoke-filled corridor, Ethan leading with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of these floors in the dark. Behind them, he could hear panicked voices, the sound of breaking glass. The smoke was getting thicker, and Isabella was starting to cough, her hand pressed protectively over her belly. Almost there, Ethan assured her, though the service elevator seemed miles away. That's when he heard it, a voice crying for help from one of the offices. Someone's trapped, Isabella gasped. Keep going, Ethan ordered. The elevator's just ahead. Hit the parking garage button and get out. What about you? I'll be right behind you. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Isabella, proving she was indeed the leader everyone said she was, nodded and kept moving. Ethan turned back toward the voice, plunging into the smoke-filled office. He found her in the corner. Amy, one of the night shift cleaners. A kid, really. Maybe 19. She'd twisted her ankle trying to navigate in the dark and panic. Without hesitation, Ethan hauled her up, supporting most of her weight as they stumbled toward the exit. By the time he got Amy to the stairwell where other evacuees could help her, the smoke on the executive floor had turned into visible flames licking at the walls. The service elevator was no longer an option. Ethan made his way to the main stairs, joining the stream of people fleeing downward. He'd made it down 10 floors when he heard the scream. It cut through the chaos like a knife, high and terrified. Ethan looked up to see Isabella on the landing above, cornered by a man in a ski mask. In his hand was a gun, pointed directly at her belly. "Everyone back!" the man shouted, his voice cracking with desperation or drugs or both. "This bitch cost me everything. Her company's AI replaced me, replaced all of us. 8 years at that firm, and they threw us away like garbage." The crowd scattered, people pushing and shoving to get away from the weapon. But Ethan found himself moving up, against the tide, his eyes locked on Isabella's terrified face. "Please," Isabella was saying, her hands raised, trying to shield her unborn child. "I understand you're angry. We can talk about this. There are programs, compensation." "Shut up!" The gun shook in the man's hand. "You understand nothing. Living in your tower, playing with people's lives like we're just numbers on your spreadsheet. But you're going to understand loss now. You're going to understand what it feels like to have everything ripped away." Ethan was close now, close enough to see the tears streaming down Isabella's face, close enough to see the man's finger tightening on the trigger. Time slowed to a crawl. He thought of Marcus, asleep at Mrs. Chen's, trusting his dad to come home like he always did. He thought of Sarah, how she'd made him promise to take care of their boy, to give him a good life. He thought of the business card in his pocket, the chance at a new beginning. Then he stopped thinking and simply moved. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space of the stairwell. Ethan felt the impact like a sledgehammer to his shoulder, spinning him around as he crashed into Isabella, his body shielding hers as they went down together. His momentum carried them both through a door onto another floor, away from the shooter. There was screaming, chaos, the sound of people tackling the gunman, but it all seemed very far away. Ethan was aware of wetness spreading across his shirt, of Isabella's hands pressed against his shoulder, of her voice saying his name over and over. "Why?" she gasped, tears streaming down her face as she tried to stem the bleeding with her expensive jacket. "You don't even know me. Why would you—" "Because I'm a father," Ethan managed through gritted teeth. The pain was extraordinary, like someone had poured molten lead into his shoulder. "And I know what it's like to lose everything. Couldn't let him take that from you, from your baby." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Someone had found them, was shouting for paramedics. Isabella's face swam in and out of focus above him. "Stay with me," she commanded, her CEO voice cutting through his fog. "That's an order, Mr. Ward. You're starting that job on Monday, you hear me?" "Ethan? Ethan!" The world faded to black, but not before he heard her add, in a whisper that might have been prayer or promise. "You saved us. Now let me save you." When Ethan woke up, the first thing he saw was sunlight, not the harsh fluorescent glare of hospital lights, but actual sunshine streaming through a window, painting golden stripes across crisp white sheets. The second thing he saw was Marcus curled up in a chair beside his bed, his Iron Man action figure clutched in one small hand. "Dad?" Marcus's eyes flew open the moment Ethan stirred. "Dad! You're awake! Ms. Isabella, he's awake!" Before Ethan could process that his 7-year-old was on a first-name basis with a billionaire, Isabella appeared in the doorway. She looked different, the corporate armor replaced with a simple sweater and jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her belly seemed even more prominent now, or maybe it was just the way she was cradling it protectively. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You've been out for 3 days. The doctor said the surgery went well, no permanent damage, though you'll need physical therapy." 3 days? Ethan tried to sit up, wincing as his shoulder protested violently. "Marcus, school is covered," Isabella interrupted. "Mrs. Chen has been wonderful, and Marcus has been here after school every day. We've become quite good friends, haven't we?" Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "Ms. Isabella knows all about rockets, and she said, when you're better, we can visit the Space Museum." Ethan looked between his son and the woman he'd taken a bullet for, trying to make sense of this new world he'd woken up in. "You didn't have to eat—" "Yes, I did." Isabella's voice brooked no argument. "You saved my life. My child's life. The least I can do is make sure your son is taken care of while you recover. The shooter, in custody. Turns out he was part of a group planning to target several tech companies. The fire was a distraction. If you hadn't... She trailed off, her hand going to her belly. The FBI says your actions probably prevented a much larger tragedy. Marcus climbed onto the bed carefully, snuggling into Ethan's good side. Ms. Isabella says you're a hero, Dad. A real one, not just the cleaning kind. All heroes are the cleaning kind, buddy, Ethan said, ruffling his son's hair. Some of us just clean up different messes. Isabella laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. Speaking of messes, we need to talk about that job offer. I'm pretty sure getting shot voids the interview process. Ethan attempted a joke. Actually, it fast-tracks it. She pulled out a tablet, all business despite the casual clothes. $175 to start, not $150. Full medical coverage, including all your current bills from this incident. And yes, before you argue, that's standard company policy for workplace injuries. Flexible hours, with the understanding that you'll need time for physical therapy. And Marcus gets access to our corporate daycare program, which includes after-school tutoring and summer programs. Ethan's head spun. This is too much. No, it's not enough. Isabella's voice turned fierce. Do you know what happened after you spotted that error in our projections? We found 3 more similar issues, all bleeding money we didn't even know we were losing. Your 30-second observation saved us more than $100 million over the next fiscal year. That's before we even talk about the fact that you literally took a bullet for me. I didn't do it for money. I know. Her expression softened. That's exactly why I'm offering it. The world is full of people who do the right thing only when someone's watching, only when there's something in it for them. You did it when you thought no one would ever know. When you had everything to lose and nothing to gain. She reached into her purse, pulling out something that made Ethan's heart stop. It was his old notebook, the one he'd thought he'd lost months ago. The one filled with ideas, algorithms, solutions to problems he worked on during his breaks, just to keep his mind sharp. Security found this in the maintenance locker, Isabella said. I hope you don't mind, but I looked through it. Ethan, these ideas, they're brilliant, revolutionary even. Why didn't you ever try to sell them, start your own company? With what capital? What connections? Ethan shook his head. Besides, my son needs stability, not his dad chasing pipe dreams. What if I told you it wouldn't be a pipe dream? What if I told you that Nexus wants to develop these ideas, with you leading the team? Your name on the patents, profit-sharing agreement, the whole 9 yards. Marcus looked up at his father with huge eyes. Does this mean we're going to be rich, Dad? It means, Ethan said slowly, looking at Isabella, that sometimes life gives you second chances in the strangest ways. Isabella smiled, and for the first time since Sarah died, Ethan felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Hope. There's one more thing, Isabella said, suddenly looking almost shy. I want to name him after you. Him? She patted her belly. Found out yesterday, a boy. And I want to name him Ethan, if that's okay with you. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. This woman, this stranger who'd become something else entirely in the space of one violent night, wanted to name her child after him. A janitor. A nobody who'd just been in the right place at the right time. I think, he said, his voice rough with emotion, that would be an honor. Marcus whooped with delight. That means there'll be 2 Ethans, Big Ethan and Little Ethan. That's so cool. As his son chattered excitedly about all the things he could teach little Ethan, and Isabella smiled that warm, grateful smile, Ethan Ward realized that sometimes falling from grace was just life's way of positioning you to catch someone else when they fell. The hospital room filled with laughter and planning and hope. 3 people who'd been strangers a week ago now bound together by violence and courage and the strange alchemy of human connection. Outside, Manhattan hummed with its usual chaos, but inside this small room, a new family was taking shape. Not the kind defined by blood or law, but by choice and chance, and the willingness to see beyond surface appearances to the gold that sometimes hides in the most unexpected places. 2 months later, Ethan stood in front of a whiteboard covered in equations, explaining to a room full of Nexus engineers how his new algorithm could revolutionize their entire trading platform. His shoulders still ached sometimes, a reminder of that night, but he wore it like a badge of honor. "Mr. Ward," one of the senior engineers interrupted, "this is impressive, but the implementation would require completely restructuring our existing framework." "Yes," Ethan agreed simply. "Sometimes you have to tear down what's broken before you can build something better." Through the glass wall of the conference room, he could see Isabella in her office, her feet up on her desk, very pregnant and absolutely glowing as she conducted a video call with investors. She caught his eye and gave him a thumbs up. After the meeting, Ethan found her in the break room, struggling to reach something on a high shelf. "Let me," he said, easily grabbing the box of tea she'd been after. "My hero, again?" she teased, but there was genuine warmth in it. "How'd the presentation go?" "They think I'm crazy." "Perfect. All the best ideas sound crazy at first." She studied him over her mug. "You know, I never properly thanked you." "You gave me a job worth more than I ever dreamed of making." "I think that counts as thanks." "No," Isabella said seriously. "I mean, really thanked you, not as a CEO, not as your boss, but as a mother. You gave my son a chance at life. You gave me a chance to meet him. There aren't words for that kind of gift." "You gave me back my life too," Ethan admitted. "After Sarah died, I was just going through the motions, surviving, not living. This job, this chance, it reminded me that I'm more than just my worst moments." "We all are," Isabella agreed. "Sometimes it just takes someone else to see it first." That evening, Ethan picked Marcus up from the Nexus daycare program, where he'd been building rockets out of Legos with the other kids. As they walked through the lobby, several people nodded respectfully at Ethan. The story of the janitor who saved the CEO had become company legend, though Ethan wished it would fade faster. "Dad," Marcus said as they waited for the subway, "are you happy now?" It was such a simple question, but it hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. When was the last time Marcus had seen him truly happy? "Yeah, buddy," he said, pulling his son close. "I really am." "Good. Mom would be happy too." Ethan looked down at his son in surprise. Marcus rarely mentioned Sarah anymore. "She told me in a dream," Marcus continued matter-of-factly, the way only children can discuss the profound. "She said she was proud of you for being brave. And she likes Ms. Isabella." "Oh yeah?" "Yeah, she said Miss Isabella and little Ethan are going to be our family now. Not replacing family, but adding family. Like when you do math and make the number bigger." Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought, marveling at his son's simple wisdom. 3 weeks later, Isabella went into labor during a board meeting. Ethan was in his office, deep in code, when his assistant burst in. "Mr. Ward, Ms. Grant is in labor, and she's asking for you." He found Isabella in her office, breathing through a contraction while somehow still trying to finish an email. "I swear this child has his father's timing," she gasped, then looked mortified. "I mean, not his father. The biological father. He's not in the picture." Ethan had wondered, but never asked. Isabella Grant's personal life was notably absent from all those magazine profiles. "Do you have someone to call? Family?" "My parents are in Tokyo for the month. My sister's in London." Another contraction hit, and she gripped the edge of her desk. "I planned this perfectly." He wasn't due for another 2 weeks. "I had spreadsheets." "Babies don't care about spreadsheets," Ethan said gently. "Come on, let's get you to the hospital." "I can call a car." "Isabella." He used her first name deliberately, watching her eyes widen slightly. "Let me help." "Please." She nodded, and something shifted between them in that moment. The careful professional distance they'd maintained cracked just a little. The next 12 hours were a blur. Ethan stayed because Isabella asked him to, gripping his hand through contractions while alternating between threatening to fire him if he ever told anyone she cried and apologizing for ruining his shirt with her tears. "This is karma," she gasped between pushes. "I restructure companies without breaking a sweat, but one tiny human is completely destroying me." "You're doing amazing," Ethan assured her, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. "Just a little more." "How do you know?" "Because you're the strongest person I've ever met, and because the nurse is literally holding your son's head, so I'm pretty sure we're close." Isabella cried, squeezing his hand hard enough to cut off circulation. 2 pushes later, Ethan Samuel Grant entered the world, screaming his displeasure at the bright lights and cold air. "He's perfect," Isabella sobbed, cradling her son against her chest. "Oh my God, he's perfect." Ethan stepped back to give them space, but Isabella caught his hand. "Stay," she said softly. "Please. I don't want to be alone for this." So he stayed, watching as Isabella transformed from CEO to mother, cooing at her son, counting his fingers and toes, marveling at his tiny features. When she finally fell asleep, exhausted, Ethan carefully took little Ethan so she could rest, walking him around the room, humming the same lullabies he'd once sung to Marcus. "Your mom's pretty special," he whispered to the baby. "She saved my life too, you know. Gave me a reason to be more than I thought I could be. You're lucky to have her, and she's lucky to have you." The baby made a small sound, his tiny fist wrapping around Ethan's finger with surprising strength. That's how Isabella woke up, to find Ethan standing by the window, her son sleeping peacefully in his arms, sunlight painting them both golden. The sight made her heart do something complicated in her chest. "You're good at that," she said softly. "Lots of practice." Though Marcus was never this quiet. Kid came out talking and hasn't stopped since. Isabella laughed, then winced. "Don't make me laugh. Everything hurts." "I should go," Ethan said, carefully transferring the baby back to her. "Let you rest. Marcus will be wondering where I am." "Ethan?" Isabella called as he reached the door. "Thank you. For everything. For staying." "Any time," he said, and meant it. But as he walked to his car, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally shifted. The careful boundaries they'd maintained, the professional distance, it was dissolving like sugar in rain, and that terrified him more than any gun ever could. The weeks following little Ethan's birth blurred together in a haze of algorithm development and unexpected intimacy. Ethan Ward found himself straddling 2 worlds, the professional realm where he was revolutionizing Nexus's financial systems, and the personal sphere where Isabella Grant kept pulling him deeper into her orbit, seemingly without realizing she was doing it. "Your code is poetry," Dr. James Liu, the head of engineering, said one morning, staring at Ethan's latest framework. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone approach parallel processing quite like this." "It's just math," Ethan deflected, uncomfortable with praise after years of invisibility. "The elegant solution is usually the right one." "That's exactly what Einstein used to say," James mused. "You know, the board is already talking about fast-tracking you to VP of Innovation. Isabella's been singing your praises in every meeting." Ethan's phone buzzed before he could respond. A photo from Isabella. Little Ethan grabbing at a toy mobile, his face scrunched in concentration. The text read, "He has your frown when you're debugging code." He caught himself smiling and quickly pocketed the phone, but not before James noticed. "You and the boss seem close," James observed carefully. "Not many people get baby pictures from Isabella Grant." "We're friends," Ethan said firmly. "She needed support after the birth. That's all." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't that simple. Nothing with Isabella ever was. That evening, Marcus bounced excitedly as they walked through Central Park, their new routine since moving to a better apartment closer to Nexus headquarters. The Rays had changed everything. Better neighborhood, better school, better everything except the gnawing feeling that Ethan was betraying Sarah's memory by moving forward. "Dad, can we visit baby Ethan again?" Marcus asked, kicking at fallen leaves. "He's probably doing something new by now. Babies learn stuff super fast. He's only 6 weeks old, buddy. Mostly, he just sleeps and eats." "But Ms. Isabella says he smiled yesterday." "A real smile, not the gas kind." Ethan stopped walking. "When did Ms. Isabella tell you that?" "When she called during lunch. She calls every day at lunch to say hi. Marcus said this like it was the most natural thing in the world. She says it's the best part of her day because I tell the funniest stories." This was news to Ethan. Isabella Grant, CEO of a billion-dollar company, was taking time out of her schedule to call his 7-year-old son every day at lunch. "She didn't mention that," Ethan said carefully. "Maybe she forgot. She forgets lots of stuff lately. Yesterday she wore 2 different shoes to work." Marcus giggled. "She sent me a picture." They were both black, but one had a buckle and one didn't. Before Ethan could process this, his phone rang. Speak of the devil, Isabella's name lit up the screen. Ethan, thank God, she said without preamble. And he could hear little Ethan crying in the background. I know it's after hours. I know this is inappropriate, but my nanny just quit, literally walked out, and I have the Japanese investors' dinner in an hour, and I've called every backup service. But there's some concert tonight, and everyone's booked, and... Breathe, Ethan interrupted. We'll be there in 15 minutes. We? Marcus and I. He's been dying to see the baby anyway. The relief in her voice was palpable. You're saving my life. Again. Isabella's penthouse was a study in contrasts. Priceless art on the walls, but baby spit up on the Italian leather couch. A Steinway piano serving as a changing table, board reports scattered between burp cloths and bottles. She answered the door in a stunning black cocktail dress, with her hair half done and baby formula staining the shoulder. I'm a disaster, she said, shoving little Ethan into Ethan's arms. He won't stop crying, I can't get my hair to cooperate, and I'm pretty sure I put my underwear on backward. Go, Ethan said calmly, the baby already settling against his chest. Finish getting ready. We've got this. Marcus had already found the toy box Isabella kept for him. When had she bought toys for Marcus? And was setting up an elaborate game involving dinosaurs and spaceships. Can I help with baby Ethan? Marcus asked hopefully. Sure, buddy. You can be my assistant. First mission, locate a clean burp cloth. As Marcus raced off on his quest, Ethan walked little Ethan around the living room, taking in the space. The penthouse was beautiful but cold, like a magazine spread waiting to be photographed. The only lived-in spots were where the baby had clearly taken over, a vibrating bouncer by the window, a playmat in what should have been a formal sitting area. On the mantel, he noticed a photo that made him pause. It was Isabella in a hospital bed, looking exhausted but radiant, holding newborn Ethan. But what stopped his breath was that he was in the photo too, standing beside the bed, his hand resting protectively on the back of her hospital chair. He didn't even remember someone taking it. That's my favorite picture, Isabella said from behind him. She'd transformed, hair swept up elegantly, makeup flawless, the formula stain hidden under a strategic scarf. You both look so protective, like guardian angels. Isabella, I know what you're going to say, she interrupted. This is getting too personal, too complicated. But Ethan, She stopped, seeming to realize Marcus was listening. We'll talk later. I should go. The dinner will be fine, Ethan assured her. Go close your deal. We'll be here when you get back. She kissed little Ethan's head, hesitated, then kissed Marcus's too. Be good for your dad, sweetheart. The look she gave Ethan before leaving was loaded with things unsaid. The evening passed peacefully. Little Ethan finally settled. Marcus read him stories, mostly involving explosions and aliens, and Ethan found himself oddly at home in Isabella's space. He ordered pizza for dinner, cleaned up the disaster zone that was her kitchen, and even managed to organize some of the scattered paperwork into coherent piles. He was just getting both boys settled on the couch for a movie when he noticed a folder marked Confidential, Project Prometheus. His blood ran cold. Prometheus was his old company, the one that had collapsed and taken his career with it. Why would Isabella have files on it? Unable to resist, he opened the folder. Inside were acquisition papers, dated 3 weeks ago. Nexus had bought all of Prometheus's remaining intellectual property, including patents that had Ethan's name on them. Patents he'd assumed were worthless after the company's bankruptcy. But according to these documents, Isabella had paid $15 million for them. There was a note in her handwriting. Ethan's work deserves to see the light, even if he never knows we have them. Dad, the movie's starting, Marcus called. Ethan quickly closed the folder, his mind reeling. Isabella had spent $15 million to acquire his old work. Not to use it, apparently, but just because she believed it deserved better than being buried in legal limbo. When Isabella returned 3 hours later, both boys were asleep. Marcus curled against Ethan's side, baby Ethan peaceful in his arms. She stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching them, an expression on her face that Ethan couldn't quite read. Successful dinner? He whispered. We got the contract, she whispered back, setting down her purse and slipping off her heels. $60 million investment, but honestly, this is better. This? She gestured at the scene before her. Coming home to people, to family. She caught herself. I mean, not family, just, people who aren't paid to be here. About that, Ethan said carefully. You quit paying the nanny. Isabella sank onto the couch beside him, careful not to wake the boys. She said little Ethan was too difficult. Can you imagine? He's a baby. They're supposed to be difficult. You can't keep calling me every time you have a childcare crisis. I know. She looked down at her hands. It's just, you're the only person who doesn't make me feel like a failure at this. Everyone else looks at me like, how can she run a billion-dollar company but can't figure out how to warm a bottle properly? You're not a failure, Ethan said firmly. You're a single mom with a demanding job figuring it out as you go, just like I did. How? Isabella's voice was small. How did you do it alone after Sarah? Ethan was quiet for a long moment, remembering those dark days. I almost didn't. There were nights I sat in Marcus's room, watching him sleep, wondering how I was going to make it to morning, let alone raise him right. But then the sun would come up and he'd need breakfast, so I'd make breakfast. Then he'd need to get to school, so I'd get him to school. You survive minute by minute until suddenly you realize you're not just surviving anymore. When does that happen? The not just surviving part. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. In the soft light from the kitchen, with her makeup slightly smudged and her perfect hair starting to fall, she looked nothing like the untouchable CEO from magazine covers. She looked like what she was, a scared new mother trying her best. I think, he said slowly, it's happening right now. The weight of that statement hung between them. Isabella's hand found his on the couch, their fingers intertwining naturally, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Ethan, she breathed, I need to tell you something. Baby Ethan chose that moment to wake up crying, shattering the moment. Isabella laughed, but there were tears in her eyes. His timing really is terrible, she said, taking her son from Ethan's arms. Just like his... She stopped abruptly. Like his father? Ethan supplied gently. Isabella's face crumpled. He was a mistake. Not little Ethan, never him, but his father. We dated for 2 months. He was charming, said all the right things. The pregnancy was an accident, and when I told him, he gave me a check for an abortion and his lawyer's number, said his political career couldn't afford a scandal. Political career? He's a senator now, running for president next term, according to the news. She laughed bitterly. Family values candidate, if you can believe it. Married his campaign manager 2 months after leaving me. Ethan felt a surge of protective anger. He doesn't know what he gave up. No, Isabella agreed, looking down at her son. He doesn't. But sometimes I wonder if I'm enough, if I can be both parents to him. You don't have to be both parents, Ethan said without thinking. You just have to be his mom. That's enough. You're enough. Marcus stirred then, blinking sleepily. Are we having a sleepover? He asked hopefully. Nobody, we should go home. Actually, Isabella interrupted, it is pretty late, and tomorrow's Saturday. You could stay in the guest room, if you want. I mean, it would be easier than waking Marcus up fully. Ethan knew he should say no. Every rational part of his brain was screaming that this was crossing a line they couldn't uncross. But Marcus was already excited, and Isabella looked so hopeful, and baby Ethan had grabbed his finger again with that surprisingly strong grip. Just tonight, he said, but they all knew it wouldn't be just tonight. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of laughter. He found Marcus in the kitchen, carefully holding a bottle for baby Ethan while Isabella made pancakes, burning them from the smell. Dad, Marcus called. Ms. Isabella is teaching me how to feed the baby. And she's making breakfast, but I think something's wrong with her pan. There's nothing wrong with my pan, Isabella protested, frantically waving a dish towel at the smoke detector. I followed the recipe exactly. Ethan moved to the stove, smoothly taking over. The heat's too high, and you didn't wait for the pan to be ready. He poured fresh batter, the pancakes sizzling perfectly. Didn't anyone ever teach you to cook? I had a chef growing up, Isabella admitted. and then assistants, and then takeout menus. This is literally my first attempt at pancakes. Dad makes the best pancakes, Marcus informed her seriously. Sometimes he makes them look like dinosaurs. Dinosaur pancakes? Isabella looked genuinely intrigued. Is that difficult? And so Ethan found himself teaching a billionaire CEO how to make dinosaur-shaped pancakes while his son taught her how to burp a baby. It was surreal and domestic and dangerously perfect. I have a confession, Isabella said as they ate, baby Ethan sleeping in his bouncer. I may have had ulterior motives for asking you to stay last night. Ethan tensed. Oh. There's a company family picnic next weekend. Board members, major investors, important clients, everyone brings their families, and I don't have one. Not in the traditional sense. She took a breath. I was wondering if you and Marcus would come with me. As friends, just friends, but it would help to have people there who actually like me for me, not my net worth. You want us to be your fake family? Ethan asked, trying to keep his tone light. Not fake, Isabella said quickly. Never fake. You're the realest people in my life. I need moral support. And Marcus loves picnics, right, Marcus? I love picnics, Marcus confirmed through a mouthful of pancake. Will there be games? Three-legged races, egg tosses, even a dunk tank, Isabella promised. The CEO traditionally sits in the dunk tank for charity. You're going to let people throw balls at you? Ethan asked, incredulous. It raises money for our STEM program in underserved schools. Last year, we raised $200,000. How much to not throw balls at you? Marcus asked innocently, making both adults laugh. I like the way you think, Isabella told him. You're going to be a CEO yourself someday. As they cleaned up breakfast together, moving around each other with surprising ease, Ethan caught a glimpse of what this could be. What they could be. A family. Not the one he'd planned with Sarah, not the one Isabella had probably imagined for herself, but something new. Something that might actually work. The thought terrified him. I should check in with the office, Isabella said, pulling out her phone. The Tokyo team will be... Oh no. What's wrong? She showed him her phone. The screen was filled with notifications, all variations of the same theme. Nexus stock plunges on leaked memo. Someone leaked an internal document suggesting we're abandoning Project Mercury, Isabella said, her CEO mask sliding into place. That's completely false, but the damage is done. I need to get to the office. It's Saturday. Stock markets in Asia are open. If I don't fix this now, we'll lose billions by Monday. She was already moving, gathering her things, when baby Ethan started crying again. She froze, torn between her two worlds. Go, Ethan said. We'll watch him. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. He picked up baby Ethan, who immediately settled. Go save your company. We'll be here when you get back. Isabella looked between him and the baby, her professional and personal selves warring visibly on her face. I promise we'll take good care of him, Marcus added solemnly. I'm a really good big brother. I've been practicing with my friend Tommy's baby sister. That broke through Isabella's hesitation. She kissed baby Ethan, then impulsively kissed Ethan's cheek. Thank you. I'll make this up to you, I swear. She was gone before Ethan could respond, leaving him with a baby, an excited 7-year-old, and the lingering warmth of her lips on his cheek. The day passed in a blur of bottles, diapers, and Marcus's enthusiastic attempts to teach baby Ethan about dinosaurs. They went to the park, where Ethan endured the knowing looks of other parents who assumed he was a divorced dad with weekend custody. Marcus pushed the stroller proudly, telling anyone who would listen about his baby brother Ethan. Ethan didn't correct him. He was too busy trying not to examine why that felt so right. Isabella didn't return until almost midnight. Ethan was on the couch, laptop open, working on code while both boys slept. Marcus sprawled across his lap, baby Ethan in the portable crib they'd moved to the living room. You're still here, she said softly, looking exhausted but relieved. Crisis averted? Crisis managed. We'll still take a hit Monday, but not the catastrophe it could have been. She collapsed beside him on the couch, her head dropping onto his shoulder without hesitation. I don't know what I would have done without you today. You would have figured it out. You always do. No, she said firmly. I wouldn't have. I would have had to choose between my company and my son, and either choice would have broken me a little. They sat in comfortable silence, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. Ethan became hyper-aware of every point of contact between them, her head on his shoulder, her hand resting on his arm, the way her breathing synced with his. The Prometheus patents, he said suddenly. Isabella stiffened. You saw the folder. Why? She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, because you deserved better than what happened to you. Your work was brilliant, innovative, years ahead of its time. It shouldn't have died with that company. $15 million is a lot of money for sentiment. It's not sentiment, it's justice. And besides, she lifted her head to look at him, I plan to make 10 times that when we implement your designs. I'm a businesswoman, Ethan. I don't make investments that won't pay off. And what about this? He gestured at their position, at the boys sleeping nearby, at the domestic scene they'd created. Is this an investment too? Isabella's eyes flashed with hurt. Is that really what you think? That I'm calculating the ROI on every moment we spend together? I don't know what to think, Ethan admitted. 2 months ago, I was mopping your floors. Now I'm in your house, taking care of your son, and you're looking at me like what? Like I'm more than just your employee who took a bullet for you. Isabella pulled away, standing abruptly. You are more than that. She stopped, running her hands through her hair in frustration. God, Ethan, you have to know by now that you're everything. You and Marcus, you've become everything to us. The admission hung in the air like a challenge. Isabella, no, let me finish. I know this is complicated. I know I'm your boss, and that makes this ethically messy. I know you're still grieving Sarah, and I'm a single mother with trust issues and a company to run. I know all the reasons this shouldn't work. But Ethan, when I'm with you, none of that matters. When I watch you with my son, when I see Marcus teaching him silly songs, when we're all together like this, it feels like family. It feels like home. And I haven't felt that since my parents died. Your parents are in Tokyo, Ethan said, confused. Isabella's laugh was bitter. My parents died when I was 22, car accident. The people in Tokyo are my father's investors who I call Mom and Dad to maintain the fiction that I have a support system. No one wants to trust a billion-dollar company to an orphan with abandonment issues. The revelation recontextualized everything Ethan thought he knew about her. The workaholic tendencies, the desperate need for control, the way she'd latched onto him and Marcus like lifelines. We're both orphans, he said softly. In different ways. Broken people trying to build something whole, Isabella agreed. Ethan stood, closing the distance between them. We're not broken. We're just experienced. We know what loss feels like, which makes us appreciate what we have even more. And what do we have? Isabella asked, her voice barely a whisper. Instead of answering with words, Ethan did what he'd been wanting to do for weeks. He kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, both of them afraid of shattering this fragile thing between them. Then Isabella's arms went around his neck, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and honest and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isabella's eyes were bright with tears. This changes everything, she said. Everything's already changed, Ethan pointed out. We're just finally admitting it. Before Isabella could respond, baby Ethan started crying. They both laughed, the tension breaking. His timing really is the worst, Ethan said, moving to pick up the baby. Just like his father, Isabella said, then froze. I mean, I know what you meant. But as Ethan soothed the crying infant, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, she'd meant something else entirely. Marcus woke up then, rubbing his eyes. Is it morning? Nobody, just baby Ethan being fussy. Maybe he had a bad dream, Marcus said sagely. I used to have bad dreams after Mom went to heaven. But Dad would hold me and sing the special song, and then the dreams would go away. What special song? Isabella asked. Marcus looked at his dad. Can you sing it for baby Ethan? Ethan hesitated. He hadn't sung that song since Sarah died. It was their song. The one she'd hummed while pregnant with Marcus. The one they'd danced to at their wedding. But looking at Isabella's hopeful face, at baby Ethan's teary eyes, at his own son's encouraging smile. He realized maybe it was time to let the past inform the future instead of imprisoning it. So he sang, soft and low, a lullaby about coming home, about finding where you belong. Baby Ethan settled almost immediately, his eyes drooping closed, but it was Isabella who was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "Mom thought so too," Marcus said. "She said songs are like bridges. They help us get from sad to happy." Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought again. "I should get Marcus home," he said eventually. "It's late." "Or," Isabella said carefully, "you could stay. Both of you. The guest room has 2 beds, and tomorrow's Sunday. We could have breakfast together. Real breakfast, not my burnt pancake disaster." Ethan looked at Marcus, who was practically vibrating with hope. "Please, Dad. Baby Ethan might need us." He looked at Isabella, who was trying so hard to seem casual about the invitation, but failing completely. "Just tonight," he said, the same thing he'd said before. But they all knew it was becoming more than that. It was becoming always. Sunday morning arrived with rain pattering against the windows, the kind of gentle storm that made the world feel smaller, cozier. Ethan woke to find Marcus already gone from the guest room, his excited chatter echoing from somewhere in the penthouse. Following the sound, he found his son in Isabella's massive kitchen, standing on a step stool beside her as she attempted to crack eggs into a bowl. "You have to be gentle," Marcus was instructing seriously, "like you're petting a baby bunny." "I don't think I've ever petted a baby bunny," Isabella admitted, shell fragments falling into the bowl despite her careful efforts. "We'll have to fix that," Marcus declared. "Dad, tell Ms. Isabella about the time we went to the petting zoo and the bunny ate your shoelace." Ethan leaned against the doorframe, taking in the scene. Isabella wore silk pajamas that probably cost more than his old monthly rent, her hair messy from sleep, no makeup, and she'd never looked more beautiful. Baby Ethan was in his high chair, gumming a teething ring and watching the chaos with wide eyes. "You're teaching her your grandmother's French toast recipe," Ethan observed, recognizing the ingredients. "She said she wanted to learn to cook real breakfast," Marcus explained. "And Grandma's recipe is the best, even though we never met her." Isabella looked up at him then, flour dusting her cheek. "Your mother's recipe?" "Sarah's mom's, actually. She taught it to Sarah, Sarah taught it to me, and now apparently Marcus is passing on the tradition." Something flickered in Isabella's eyes at the mention of Sarah, but before Ethan could analyze it, his phone rang. The display showed his supervisor from his old janitorial job. "Victor?" he answered, confused. "It's Sunday morning." "Ethan, thank God." Victor's voice was strained. "I know you don't work here anymore, but something's happened. There's been another incident at the Nexus building. Police are here. They're asking about you, about that night with the fire and the shooting." Ethan's blood ran cold. What kind of incident? "Someone broke into the executive floor last night. They spray-painted threats all over the walls, said this was just the beginning, that they weren't done with the company or the people who stopped them before." Isabella had moved closer, concern etched on her face. Ethan put the phone on speaker. "The thing is," Victor continued, "they knew details. About where you were standing when you got shot, about the janitor's cart you used to prop the door. Details that weren't in any news reports. The cops think it might be connected to the original attack." "We'll be right there," Isabella said, her CEO voice taking over. "Miss Grant? I didn't know." 30 minutes, Victor. Tell the police we're coming." She was already moving, her phone out, calling her security chief, her lawyer, arranging childcare for baby Ethan. The transformation from domestic goddess in training to corporate warrior was instant and complete. "Marcus, buddy, you're going to stay here with Mrs. Patterson," Ethan said as an elderly woman appeared at the door, apparently Isabella's emergency nanny. "But Dad," no arguments. "This is grown-up stuff." Marcus's lower lip trembled. "Is someone trying to hurt you again?" Ethan knelt down, pulling his son close. "No one's going to hurt me. But I need to go help the police figure out what happened. I'll be back soon." "Promise?" "Promise." As they rode down in Isabella's private elevator, she said quietly, "You don't have to come." This is my company, my problem. Someone's threatening us because I stopped them from hurting you. That makes it our problem. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. I'm scared, Ethan. What if they come after the boys? What if... We won't let that happen, he said firmly, though the same fear was clawing at his chest. The executive floor was a crime scene. The walls were covered in angry red spray paint, corporate killers. You destroyed our lives. This isn't over. But it was the last message that made Ethan's stomach turn. The janitor and the bitch will pay. They're brats, too. Detective Maria Santos, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, took their statements with clinical efficiency. Mr. Ward, we've been investigating the original shooter, David Chen. Turns out he wasn't working alone. He was part of a group calling themselves the Displaced, people who lost their jobs to automation and AI. They've been planning attacks on tech companies for months. How many are in this group? Isabella asked. We're not sure. Chen isn't talking, and their online communications are encrypted. But based on the sophistication of last night's break-in, we're dealing with at least 3 or 4 others, possibly more. So they're still out there, Ethan said flatly. Still planning to hurt us. We're increasing security at the building and assigning protection details to both of you and your children. Detective Santos's expression softened slightly. I know this is frightening, but we're taking this very seriously. We won't let them hurt you or your families. But as they looked at the hate-filled messages covering the walls, Ethan wondered if police protection would be enough. The next week passed in a blur of increased security, police interviews, and trying to maintain normalcy for the boys. Isabella had moved them all into her penthouse temporarily, insisting it was safer with her building's superior security. Ethan had resisted at first, but the logic was undeniable. Plus, Marcus was thrilled to have a sleepover every night with baby Ethan. This is temporary, Ethan kept reminding himself as he watched Isabella reading bedtime stories to Marcus, as he taught her how to properly hold a bottle for baby Ethan, as they moved around each other in the kitchen with increasing synchronicity. But temporary was starting to feel permanent. Thursday evening, Isabella came home from work looking shaken. There was a man outside the building today. Security caught him taking photos of everyone coming and going. When they questioned him, he ran. Ethan pulled her into his arms without thinking, feeling her tremble against him. Did they catch him? No, but he dropped his phone. The police have it now. She pulled back to look at him. There were pictures of Marcus's school on it, Ethan. They know where he goes to school. The rage that flooded through him was primal, protective. We're pulling him out tomorrow. Already arranged. Nexus has a corporate tutoring program. He can study from the office with full security. She touched his face gently. I'm so sorry. I never meant for my world to put you both in danger. Hey, he said firmly, this isn't your fault. These people are sick, blaming others for their problems instead of adapting. You didn't make them violent. But if you hadn't saved me, then little Ethan would be growing up without a mother, and Marcus would be growing up without... He trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. Without what? Isabella prompted softly. Without you, he admitted. Both of you. You've become so important to him, Isabella. To us. She kissed him then, desperate and fierce, like she was trying to memorize the feel of him. When they broke apart, there were tears on her cheeks. I love you, she whispered. I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated, but I love you, Ethan Ward. You and Marcus both. Before he could respond, Marcus's voice called from the hallway. Dad, I had the bad dream again. They found him standing in his pajamas, clutching his Iron Man figure, tears streaming down his face. The bad man was trying to hurt baby Ethan, he sobbed, and you weren't there to stop him. Isabella scooped him up without hesitation, carrying him to the couch. It was just a dream, sweetheart. Baby Ethan is safe in his crib, see? She pointed to the baby monitor showing little Ethan sleeping peacefully. But what if the bad men come back? Marcus asked, curling into Isabella's embrace like he'd been doing it his whole life. Then your dad and I will stop them, Isabella said firmly, just like we did before. Together, Marcus asked hopefully. Together, Ethan confirmed, sitting beside them and wrapping his arms around both. They stayed like that until Marcus fell back asleep, safe in the circle of their protection. As Ethan carried his son back to bed, he heard Isabella whisper to the baby monitor, "I'll keep them all safe, little one, whatever it takes." The company picnic was Saturday, and despite everything, Isabella insisted they still go. "We can't let fear control our lives," she said that morning, adjusting Marcus's bow tie. They'd gone shopping together earlier in the week, Isabella insisting on buying Marcus a whole new wardrobe for safety reasons, though Ethan suspected she just enjoyed spoiling his son. "Do I look like a businessman?" Marcus asked, examining himself in the mirror. "You look like a heartbreaker," Isabella told him, making him giggle. The picnic was held at a private estate in the Hamptons, with security so tight even the caterers had background checks. As they arrived, Ethan was acutely aware of the picture they made. Him carrying baby Ethan in a carrier, Isabella holding Marcus's hand, looking every inch the perfect family. "Isabella!" A woman in designer sundress rushed over. "Oh my goodness, is this your baby?" "He's gorgeous." "And who's this handsome young man?" "This is Marcus," Isabella said smoothly, "and his father, Ethan Ward. Ethan's our new VP of Innovation." The woman's eyes widened with recognition. "The one who saved you during the fire?" "Oh my God, you're a hero." Ethan shifted uncomfortably as more people gathered, all wanting to meet the man who'd taken a bullet for their CEO. Marcus, however, basked in the attention, regaling anyone who'd listen with increasingly dramatic versions of his dad's heroics. And then he flew across the room like Superman. Marcus was telling a group of enraptured children. "The bad guy didn't stand a chance." "Your son's quite the storyteller," observed a familiar voice. Ethan turned to find Dr. James Liu watching with amusement. "Though from what I hear, the real story's not far off." "It wasn't that dramatic," Ethan protested. "No? The janitor who turned out to be a genius saved the CEO's life and revolutionized our financial systems in 3 months? Sounds like a fairy tale to me." Before Ethan could respond, a commotion erupted near the dunk tank. Someone had recognized the senator, baby Ethan's biological father, who was apparently attending as a guest of one of the board members. "Is that Richard Blackwood?" someone asked excitedly. "I heard he's announcing his presidential run next month." Ethan felt Isabella stiffen beside him. The senator was holding court near the buffet table, his perfect political wife beside him, their 2 photogenic children playing nearby. The all-American family, campaign ready. "I need some air," Isabella said tightly. "I'll come with you." "No, stay. Marcus is having fun." She practically fled toward the gardens. Ethan found her 10 minutes later, sitting on a bench overlooking the ocean, baby Ethan cradled against her chest. "He doesn't even know," she said without preamble. "He looked right through me earlier like I was nobody. The father of my child doesn't even recognize me anymore." "His loss," Ethan said simply, sitting beside her. "Is it? Look at his family. Perfect wife, perfect kids, perfect life. Meanwhile, I'm a single mother whose son will grow up wondering why his father didn't want him. He'll grow up knowing his mother wanted him enough for 2 parents. And he'll have Marcus as a big brother teaching him about dinosaurs and superheroes. And he'll have—" "You?" Isabella asked hopefully. Ethan took a breath, ready to finally say what had been building for weeks, when Marcus came running up. "Dad! Dad! There's a man! He was taking pictures of me, and when I told the security guard, he ran away." Isabella was on her feet instantly. Baby Ethan clutched protectively. "Where?" "By the bounce house." The guard went after him, but the sound of sirens cut through the festive atmosphere. Within minutes, the picnic had transformed into another crime scene. The photographer had escaped, but he'd left behind a camera with hundreds of photos, not just of Marcus, but of baby Ethan, Isabella, and Ethan himself. Some were from weeks ago, showing them going about their daily routines. "They've been watching us for weeks," Detective Santos said grimly when she arrived. "This is escalating. We need to consider protective custody." "No," Isabella said firmly. "I won't let them make us prisoners." "Then what do you suggest?" the detective asked. "We go on the offensive," Ethan said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "They're angry about losing their jobs to AI, right? They blame technology, blame companies like Nexus. What if we showed them another way?" What do you mean? Isabella asked. What if Nexus started a retraining program? Free education for anyone displaced by automation, teaching them skills for the new economy. Not just charity, but real opportunity. James Liu nodded thoughtfully. It could work. Turn their narrative on its head. And if we announced it publicly, Isabella added, catching on, made it a big initiative with real funding behind it, it might diffuse some of the anger. Detective Santos looked skeptical. You want to negotiate with terrorists? No, Ethan said. We want to eliminate the conditions that create them. Within 48 hours, Isabella had mobilized the entire company. The Nexus Opportunity Initiative was announced with great fanfare, a $100 million investment in retraining programs, job placement services, and support for workers displaced by technology. We have a responsibility, Isabella said at the press conference, Ethan and the boys beside her, to ensure that progress doesn't leave anyone behind. Technology should elevate everyone, not just the few. The response was immediate and mostly positive. News outlets picked up the story, praising Nexus for its forward-thinking approach. More importantly, tips started coming into the police hotline. People who'd been sympathetic to the displaced were now providing information. But not everyone was appeased. The attack came on a quiet Tuesday evening. Ethan had just picked up Marcus from his tutoring session at Nexus, and they were walking to the car when a van screeched to a stop beside them. Everything happened so fast. Men in masks jumping out, grabbing for Marcus, Ethan fighting them off with a fury he didn't know he possessed. Run! He shouted to Marcus, who stood frozen in terror. Run to the building! One of the attackers had a knife, and Ethan felt it slice across his ribs as he grappled with them. Security guards were running toward them now, shouting, but the attackers were already retreating, jumping back into the van. Dad! Marcus sobbed, throwing himself at Ethan as the van sped away. You're bleeding! Ethan looked down to see blood soaking through his shirt. The cut wasn't deep, but it was long, and the adrenaline was already fading into pain. I'm okay, buddy. I'm okay. But he wasn't okay. None of this was okay. Isabella arrived at the hospital like a force of nature, baby Ethan in her arms, her face pale with fear and fury. 27 stitches, the doctor told them. You're lucky it wasn't deeper. Lucky, Isabella repeated bitterly after the doctor left. You could have been killed. Marcus could have been taken. How is any of this lucky? Because we're all still here, Ethan said, reaching for her hand. Still together. For how long? She asked, tears finally breaking through. How long before they succeed? Before they hurt one of you or take one of the boys? I can't lose you, any of you. Marcus, who'd been quietly coloring in the corner, looked up. Are we going to have to leave? The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Maybe, Ethan said slowly. We should. Isabella's head snapped up. What? Think about it. These people know where we live, where Marcus goes to school, where we work. Even with security, we're sitting ducks. But if we left, really left, started fresh somewhere else, you want to run? Isabella asked, but there was something in her voice that wasn't quite condemnation. I want to protect our family, Ethan said, the word our hanging meaningfully between them. We could go to Switzerland, Isabella said suddenly. Nexus has a satellite office there. I could run things remotely for a while, at least until the police catch the rest of the displaced. Switzerland has chocolate, Marcus offered hopefully, and mountains. It's halfway around the world, Ethan pointed out. Exactly, Isabella said. Far from anyone who wants to hurt us. We could leave tomorrow before anyone knows we're gone. It was insane, impulsive, completely unlike anything Ethan would normally consider. But looking at Marcus's scared face, at baby Ethan sleeping innocently in Isabella's arms, at the woman he'd somehow fallen completely in love with, he realized normal had stopped applying to their lives weeks ago. Okay, he said. Okay, Isabella repeated, surprised. Let's go to Switzerland. All of us. Together. Marcus cheered, then winced as the movement pulled at his father's stitches. Sorry, Dad. Never apologize for being happy, buddy. Isabella leaned down and kissed him, careful of his injuries. I love you, she whispered. Both of you. All three of you. We love you too, Marcus said matter-of-factly. Right, Dad? Ethan looked at his son, at Isabella, at baby Ethan, at this patchwork family they'd built from tragedy and chance and choice. Right, he confirmed. We love you too. They left New York 36 hours later on a Nexus corporate jet with enough security to protect a head of state. As the city disappeared beneath the clouds, Ethan held Isabella's hand while Marcus excitedly pointed out landmarks to baby Ethan, who gurgled happily in response. This isn't how I pictured my life going, Isabella said softly. Better or worse than expected? Ethan asked. She looked at their boys, at their joined hands, at the future spreading out before them, uncertain but theirs. Different, she said, but perfect in its own way. As the plane carried them toward their new life, Ethan thought about the strange path that had led them here. A janitor and a billionaire, a widow and a single mother, two broken families becoming one whole. It shouldn't work, but somehow it did. Dad, Marcus asked, looking up from the picture he was drawing of their family. Are we going to be okay? Ethan pulled his son close, feeling Isabella lean into his other side, baby Ethan safe in her arms. Yeah, buddy, we're going to be more than okay. And for the first time since Sarah's death, he truly believed it. The Swiss Alps rose before them like something out of a fairy tale, snow-capped peaks piercing an impossibly blue sky. Marcus had his face pressed against the car window, providing enthusiastic commentary while baby Ethan slept peacefully in his carrier. It looks like Frozen, Marcus exclaimed. Do you think there's an ice castle? Probably several, Isabella said with a smile, though Ethan could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd been on calls with New York for most of the flight, managing the crisis from 30,000 feet. Their temporary home was a chalet in Zermatt, all wood and glass with views of the Matterhorn. It was smaller than Isabella's penthouse, but warmer somehow, more intimate. As they settled in, Ethan found himself imagining a life here, teaching Marcus to ski, watching baby Ethan take his first steps in the meadow behind the house, waking up beside Isabella with mountains instead of skyscrapers outside their window. It's perfect, Isabella said, coming up behind him as he stood on the balcony. Like a dream. Dreams end, Ethan said quietly. Not all of them, she countered, wrapping her arms around his waist, careful of his still-healing wound. Some dreams just become reality. That night, after the boys were asleep, they sat by the fireplace going through the flood of messages from New York. The Opportunity Initiative was gaining momentum, with other tech companies pledging to join. More importantly, 3 members of the displaced had been arrested, including the would-be kidnapper from the picnic. It's working, Isabella said with relief. The program, the arrests, it's actually working. But? Ethan could hear the hesitation in her voice. But the board is getting nervous. A CEO who flees the country doesn't inspire confidence. They're giving me a month to either come back or step down. Ethan felt his heart sink. You can't step down. Nexus is your life. No, Isabella said firmly. It was my life. Now I have a different life. A better one. She pulled out a tablet, showing him a document. I've been thinking. What if we started something new here? A company that bridges the gap between human workers and AI, that focuses on enhancement rather than replacement? We could use your patents, my business experience. Our company? Ethan asked, something flowering in his chest. Ward Grant Technologies, Isabella said with a smile. Or Grant Ward. I'm not picky about the order. What about Nexus? I'll maintain a position on the board, keep my equity. But day-to-day operations? She shrugged. James Liu would make an excellent CEO. Ethan stared at her. You'd give up running a billion-dollar company to start over with me? I'd give up everything to keep this family safe and together, Isabella said simply. The company, the money, the prestige, none of it matters without you and the boys. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed. Unknown number, New York area code. Don't answer it, Isabella said immediately, but something made him pick up. Hello? Mr. Ward. The voice was familiar but unexpected. This is Richard Blackwood. Isabella went rigid. The senator. Baby Ethan's biological father. What do you want? Ethan asked coldly. I know you're with Isabella. I know about the child. My security team flagged the threat assessment when the displaced included my name in their manifesto. They what? Ethan put the phone on speaker. They knew about my connection to Isabella, to the baby. They were planning to expose it during my campaign launch, use it to humiliate both of us. The FBI just informed me. Isabella found her voice. Why are you calling? There was a long pause. Because I owe you both an apology and a warning. The FBI believes there's one more member of the displaced still at large, someone with inside knowledge of Nexus, someone who's been feeding them information. Who? Ethan demanded. They don't know yet. But Isabella, Ethan, he knows where you are. My team intercepted communications. You need to move now. The line went dead just as glass shattered in the front window. The rock that had shattered the window rolled across the hardwood floor, a note tied around it with red string. Ethan moved instantly, pulling Isabella away from the windows while his mind calculated angles, exits, threats. The boys were upstairs, still sleeping, unaware that their sanctuary had just been breached. Don't touch it, Isabella whispered, but Ethan was already pulling on the kitchen gloves he'd grabbed, carefully unfolding the paper. You can't run far enough. The children will pay for your sins. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth, muffling a sob. Through the broken window, they could hear movement in the darkness outside, boots crunching on gravel, getting closer. Get the boys, Ethan commanded, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Backstairs. Go to the car. Keys are in my jacket. What about you? I'll be right behind you. Go! She ran, her feet silent on the stairs, and Ethan moved to the kitchen, grabbing the knife block. His ribs screamed in protest as he positioned himself between the front door and the staircase. If someone was coming in, they'd have to go through him first. The doorknob turned slowly, testing, then stopped. Ethan held his breath, knife gripped tight, when his phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. Look outside. Come alone, or we come in. Through the window, he could see a figure standing in the driveway, illuminated by the motion sensor lights. Even from a distance, even in the darkness, Ethan recognized him. Victor Reeves, his old supervisor from the janitorial job. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Victor, who always knew which offices would be empty. Victor, who had access to every floor, every security code. Victor, who'd called him to the crime scene, ensuring he'd be there for the police to question. Ethan made a decision that went against every instinct screaming in his head. He opened the door and stepped outside. Victor, he said calmly, though his hand still gripped the knife. This isn't you. This isn't who you are. Victor laughed bitterly, and Ethan could see the gun in his waistband, the wild look in his eyes. You don't know anything about me, Ward. You worked beside me for 2 years and never once asked about my life, my family. Nothing. You're right, Ethan admitted, taking a careful step forward. I was too wrapped up in my own problems to see anyone else's. I'm sorry. Sorry? Victor's voice cracked. I trained you, covered for you when you were too grief-stricken to function properly, and the second that rich bitch noticed you, you left without a backward glance. Do you know what happened to the rest of us after the shooting? They brought in a private security firm, said we couldn't be trusted with executive floor access anymore. 20-year veterans treated like criminals. Isabella didn't know. Isabella Grant doesn't care about anyone beneath her tax bracket, Victor shouted. None of them do. We're invisible to them, just background noise until one of us snaps. Well, guess what? We all snapped. Behind Victor, more figures emerged from the shadows. 3 of them, all wearing maintenance uniforms Ethan recognized. People he'd worked alongside, shared break room coffee with, never really knowing them at all. It doesn't have to be like this, Ethan said, his mind racing. Isabella should be at the car by now with the boys. He just needed to buy them time. The Opportunity Initiative is a PR stunt, Victor spat. You think offering us coding classes makes up for decades of treating us like furniture? You got lucky, Ward. The right place, the right time, the right pretty face to save. The rest of us? We just get to keep pushing mops until robots replace us, too. One of the other men spoke up, younger, nervous. Victor, this wasn't the plan. We were just supposed to scare them, not... Plans change, Tommy. Victor pulled out his gun, not pointing it yet, just holding it. Mr. Ward here is going to call his girlfriend. Tell her to come back with those kids. We're going to have a conversation about wealth redistribution. No. Ethan's voice was steel. You want to hurt someone? Hurt me. But you leave them out of this. You still don't get it, Victor said, stepping closer. This isn't about you. It never was. You're just collateral damage. It's about her, about what she represents, the untouchable elite playing with our lives from their ivory towers. The sound of a car engine starting echoed through the night. Victor's head snapped toward the sound, and Ethan moved, not toward Victor, but toward the electrical box on the side of the house. He slammed his fist into the main breaker, plunging everything into darkness. Chaos erupted. Shouting, running, Victor firing wildly into the dark. Ethan rolled behind the woodpile, feeling splinters dig into his palms, his ribs screaming. He could hear Isabella's car speeding away, tires squealing on the mountain road, and felt a moment of relief. Then headlights blazed to life, two vehicles hidden in the trees roaring to life, giving chase. No! Ethan burst from his hiding spot, tackling Victor before he could get to one of the vehicles. They went down hard, rolling in the gravel, fighting for the gun. It went off twice, deafeningly loud, before skittering away into the darkness. Victor was stronger than he looked, fury giving him strength. His hands found Ethan's throat, squeezing, and Ethan saw stars, his injured ribs making it impossible to get leverage. You ruined everything, Victor gasped. We had a plan, a purpose, and you... The sound of sirens cut through the night, getting closer. Someone, probably Isabella, had called the police. Victor's grip loosened for just a moment, and Ethan drove his knee up, sending the older man rolling. It's over, Victor, Ethan wheezed, struggling to his feet. Let it go. But Victor was already running, disappearing into the woods as police cars screeched into the driveway. Swiss officers swarmed the property, but Ethan's only thought was for his family. The black Mercedes, he gasped to the first officer who reached him. My family, they were being chased. The officer said something in German, then switched to English. We have units intercepting. Are you injured? Ethan looked down at himself, covered in dirt and blood, some his, some Victor's. I need to find them, please. The next hour was the longest of Ethan's life. He sat in the back of a police car, giving his statement while frantically calling Isabella's phone, getting nothing but voicemail. The Swiss police were efficient, professional, but he could see the concern in their eyes. Finally, an officer approached with a phone. Mr. Ward? We have them. Isabella's voice, shaky but alive. Ethan? Oh God, Ethan, are you okay? Are you safe? The boys? We're fine. Marcus was so brave holding baby Ethan while I drove. The police stopped the cars chasing us. They arrested 2 men, but Ethan... Her voice broke. They said Victor got away. I'm coming to you. Where are you? The police station in town. Ethan, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. If I hadn't... Stop, he said firmly. None of this is your fault. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The reunion at the police station was a tangle of tears and desperate embraces. Marcus clung to Ethan like a lifeline, while Isabella held baby Ethan with one arm and gripped Ethan's hand with the other. I thought they were going to hurt you, Marcus sobbed. I wanted to help, but Isabella said my job was to protect baby Ethan. And you did perfect, buddy. You were so brave. I wasn't brave, Marcus insisted. I was scared the whole time. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared, Ethan told him. It means doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified. The Swiss police inspector, a stern woman named Muller, reviewed their statements with typical thoroughness. Mr. Reeves has likely crossed the border by now. We've notified Interpol, but these mountains, many places to hide. So he's still out there, Isabella said flatly. Yes, which is why I recommend you accept the protection program we're offering. Safe house, new identities, complete relocation. New identities? Marcus asked, confused. But I like being Marcus Ward. Isabella and Ethan exchanged looks over his head. The weight of what was being offered, a complete fresh start, but at the cost of everything they'd been, hung between them. "We need time to think," Ethan said. "Of course. But Mr. Ward, Ms. Grant, this man is obsessed. He won't stop until he's caught, or—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. They spent the night in a police safe house, the four of them crowded into one room because nobody wanted to be separated. As the boys finally slept, Isabella and Ethan sat by the window, watching the sun rise over the Alps. "We could disappear," Isabella said quietly. "Become entirely new people. The Smiths or the Johnsons, living quietly somewhere nobody knows us. You'd give up the Grant name? Your father's legacy? My father built a company. I built a family." She looked at the boys, then at him. "I know which one matters more." Ethan's phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but this time he recognized the international code. He answered cautiously. "Mr. Ward, this is Richard Blackwood again." Isabella stiffened, but Ethan kept his voice neutral. "Senator, I heard about the attack. I'm in Geneva for a diplomatic summit. I can be in Zermatt in 2 hours." "Why would you—" "Because despite what Isabella thinks of me, I'm not a complete monster, and because I have resources that might help. Private security, connections, ways to make problems disappear." "We don't need your help," Isabella said coldly, loud enough for him to hear. "Isabella." Richard's voice softened. "I know I failed you. Failed the child. But let me do this one thing right. Let me help keep you safe." "Now you want to play father?" Isabella's voice was sharp with years of hurt. "Where were you when I was throwing up every morning? When I went to ultrasounds alone? When I gave birth with a stranger holding my hand because the father of my child was too worried about his career to care?" "You're right," Richard said simply, "about all of it. I was a coward. I am a coward. But I'm also a United States Senator with a security detail and diplomatic immunity. I can get you somewhere safe, somewhere even Victor Reeves can't reach." Ethan saw the war playing out on Isabella's face. Pride versus practicality, old hurt versus present need. "What did you have in mind?" Ethan asked. 3 hours later, Richard Blackwood arrived in a convoy of black SUVs with diplomatic plates. He looked older than his campaign photos, gray creeping into his perfect hair, lines around his eyes that makeup couldn't hide. His gaze went immediately to baby Ethan in Isabella's arms, and something cracked in his perfect political facade. "He has my mother's eyes," he said softly. "He has nothing of yours," Isabella said firmly, pulling the baby closer. Richard nodded, accepting the rejection. "The embassy in Bern has a secure residence, full diplomatic protection, international territory. You'd be untouchable there while the authorities hunt for Reeves." "And what do you want in return?" Ethan asked. Richard looked at him, really looked at him, taking in the protective way Ethan stood between him and Isabella, the way Marcus hid behind his father's legs. "I want to know they're safe," Richard said. "All of them, including you, Mr. Ward. The man raising my biological son to be a better person than I could ever make him." "Ethan's not raising your son," Isabella said. "He's raising his son. Biology doesn't make you a father. Showing up does. Being there does. Taking bullets and fighting off attackers and singing lullabies at 3 a.m. makes you a father." Richard flinched at each point, but didn't argue. "You're right, which is why I'm offering this with no strings attached. No claims, no rights, no expectations. Just let me help. Let me do one decent thing in this whole mess." Marcus tugged on Ethan's shirt. "Dad, who is this man?" Before anyone could answer, baby Ethan started crying. Without thinking, Ethan took him from Isabella, bouncing him gently, humming the lullaby that always worked. The baby settled immediately, one tiny hand grasping Ethan's finger. Richard watched this with something like pain in his eyes. "One decent thing," he repeated quietly. The convoy ride to Bern was surreal. Marcus was fascinated by the diplomatic flags, the bulletproof glass, the serious security agents with earpieces. He peppered Richard with questions that the senator answered with surprising patience. "Do you really know the president?" "Several presidents, actually." "Have you been to space?" "No, but I've met astronauts." "Cool. My dad's going to teach me to be an astronaut. or a dinosaur scientist, or maybe a chef who cooks for astronauts. Your dad sounds like an amazing teacher. Isabella and Ethan exchanged glances at the wistfulness in Richard's tone. The embassy residence was like something from a movie. High walls, security checkpoints, beautiful grounds that were also a fortress. As they settled in, Richard pulled Ethan aside. "I've had my team looking into Victor Reeves. He's more dangerous than you know. Military background, special forces training before he fell on hard times. Lost his wife to cancer, couldn't afford treatment, blamed the system that valued stock prices over human lives." "Like me," Ethan said quietly. "He's like me if I'd chosen rage over resilience." "Nothing like you," Richard corrected. "You found a way forward. He only found someone to blame." "Why do you care?" "Really?" Richard was quiet for a moment, watching through the window as Isabella helped Marcus explore the garden, baby Ethan sleeping in a stroller beside them. "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life," he said finally. "Choosing career over character, image over integrity. But the worst mistake was walking away from her, from them. I told myself it was for the best, that they'd be better off without me. But really, I was just a coward." He turned to Ethan. "You're not a coward. When it mattered, you stood up. You protected them. You're the father that baby deserves, the partner Isabella deserves. Don't let my failures poison that." Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Detective Santos from New York. "Mr. Ward, I have news. We caught 2 more members of the displaced network trying to flee the country. Under interrogation, they gave us everything. Victor Reeves' location, his plans, his resources." "Where is he?" "Still in Switzerland. He's holed up in an abandoned ski lodge about 50 kilometers from Zermatt. Swiss authorities are mobilizing now." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and dread. "So it's almost over." "Almost. But Mr. Ward, they also revealed something else. The attack was never really about Miss Grant or automation. Victor Reeves has been obsessed with you specifically. He saw you as a betrayal of everything he stood for, a working man who chose to side with the elite. That's insane." "Yes, it is, which is why he's so dangerous. This is personal for him in a way that makes him unpredictable. Stay in the embassy until we have him in custody." But even as Ethan agreed, he knew Victor wouldn't wait to be caught. Men like that, driven by perceived betrayal and righteous fury, didn't go quietly. His instinct proved right 3 days later. It was Marcus who saw him first, looking out the embassy window during breakfast. "Dad, there's a man at the gate." He looked sad. Ethan moved to the window and his blood froze. Victor stood at the main gate, hands visible, no obvious weapons, just standing there like he was waiting for a bus. "Take the boys upstairs," Ethan told Isabella. "Don't you dare go out there." "I'm not. But I need to end this." Security was already mobilizing, but Victor wasn't trying to enter. He just stood there until one of the guards approached with a phone. The call came through to the residence. "Hello, Ethan." Victor's voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" "What do you want, Victor?" "To talk. Man to man, worker to worker. No weapons, no threats, just words." "The police are coming." "I know, that's why we should talk now." Against every instinct, against Isabella's pleading looks, Ethan found himself walking to the gate. Not outside it, he wasn't that foolish, but close enough to see Victor's face through the bulletproof glass. Victor looked older, grayer, like the past week had aged him years. "You look good," he said. "Happy. The kid doing okay?" "They're both fine." "Good. Kids shouldn't suffer for adult problems." Victor laughed bitterly. "Listen to me, sounding all noble. Truth is, I never wanted to hurt the kids. That was just momentum. Anger. David Chen's people getting carried away." "Then why?" "Because you got out," Victor said simply. "You escaped the trap the rest of us are stuck in, and not through hard work or playing by the rules, but through blind fucking luck. Right place, right time, right pretty face to save." "It wasn't luck," Ethan said. "It was choice. I chose to help someone in danger. I chose to speak up about the financial error. I chose to keep going after Sarah died instead of giving up." "Choice," Victor repeated mockingly. "Must be nice to have choices. Some of us just get to choose between bad and worse. You chose this, Victor. You chose to hurt people, to terrorize children. That's on you. Victor's mask finally cracked. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see my wife's face every time I close my eyes, disappointed in what I've become? She would have hated this, hated me for this. Then stop, Ethan said. It's not too late to stop. Yes, it is. Victor pulled something from his pocket, not a weapon, just a photo. A woman, smiling, beautiful despite the obvious illness. Emma would have liked you, would have said you were one of the good ones. Make sure your boy knows how lucky he is. Make sure he knows. Police sirens were getting closer. Victor carefully placed the photo on the ground, then put his hands on his head. Tell Isabella Grant something for me, he said as officers surrounded him. Tell her the system's broken, but maybe, just maybe, people like her and people like you working together can fix it. Tell her I said that. They took him away quietly, no struggle, no final declarations. Just a broken man who'd chosen the wrong path and knew it. Ethan stood at the gate for a long time after the police cars disappeared, thinking about paths not taken, choices that led to salvation or destruction, the thin line between himself and Victor Reeves. You okay? Richard Blackwood appeared beside him, surprising Ethan with his presence. I worked beside him for 2 years. Never knew about his wife, his pain, any of it. Would it have changed anything? Maybe. If I'd reached out, been a friend instead of just a coworker. You can't save everyone, Ethan. Sometimes people don't want to be saved. They want to be angry. Speaking from experience, Richard smiled sadly. More than you know. He paused, then added, I'm leaving for Washington tonight. But before I go, there's something I need to say. They walked through the embassy garden, stopping by a bench overlooking a fountain. I'm withdrawing from the presidential race, Richard said quietly. My team doesn't know yet, but I've decided. Why? Because I looked at that baby, at Isabella, at you and Marcus, and realized I've been chasing the wrong things my entire life. President Blackwood would be remembered for 4 or 8 years, but being a father, that's forever. And I threw it away. It's not too late. Yes, it is. That baby has a father, you, and he's lucky to have you. Richard stood, straightening his perfect suit. I'm setting up a trust fund for him. For both boys, actually. Isabella can't refuse. It'll be in their names, accessible when they turn 18. Enough for college, graduate school, whatever they want. Richard, let me do this. Let me contribute something positive to their lives, even if I can't be part of them. Ethan stood too, and on impulse, offered his hand. Richard shook it, his grip firm. Take care of them, Richard said. I will. I know. Richard walked away, and Ethan never saw him in person again. 6 months later, the news would report Senator Blackwood's shocking retirement from politics to focus on humanitarian work. But Ethan would know the real reason. Sometimes the bravest thing a man could do was admit he wasn't the hero of the story. That evening, with Victor in custody and the immediate threat over, the embassy residents felt different, lighter. Marcus was teaching baby Ethan to play peekaboo, both boys giggling. Isabella was on a video call with the Nexus board, officially announcing her transition to an advisory role. So what now? She asked later, after the boys were asleep, curled against Ethan on the couch. Now we build that company you mentioned. Ward Grant Technologies Grant Ward sounds better, she teased. We'll flip a coin. Or, she said, pulling out a small velvet box, we could just call it Ward Technologies. Ethan's heart stopped. Inside the box was a simple gold band, inscription visible. For the man who saved us all. Isabella, I know it's backwards, the woman proposing, but when have we ever done things the traditional way? She was nervous, he realized, this powerful CEO actually trembling. Ethan Ward, you've been my partner, my protector, my family. Will you make it official? Will you marry me? Marcus chose that moment to appear in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. Are you proposing? Cool, say yes, Dad. Then we'll all have the same last name. You were supposed to be asleep, Isabella said, but she was smiling. Baby Ethan woke up, but he's watching too, see? Marcus pointed to the baby monitor, where baby Ethan was indeed awake, gurgling happily in his crib. The whole family's weighing in, Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. He looked at Isabella, this woman who'd changed his life in every possible way. Yes, of course, yes. Marcus whooped, running to hug them both. We're getting married. Well, they are, Isabella laughed, but Marcus shook his head. No, we all are. We're becoming a real family, the kind that's official and everything. And in that moment, in a borrowed residence in a foreign country, having survived violence and threats and impossible odds, Ethan understood what home really meant. It wasn't a place or a building or even safety. It was this. These people, this love, this choice to build something together from the broken pieces of their separate pasts. We're already a real family, he told Marcus, pulling them all closer. The official part is just paperwork. Important paperwork, Isabella added, kissing him, while Marcus made exaggerated gagging noises. Outside, the Swiss night was peaceful, stars visible despite the city lights. Somewhere, Victor Reeves was in a cell contemplating his choices. Somewhere, Richard Blackwood was flying back to a life he no longer wanted. But here, in this moment, the Ward Grant family, or Grant Ward, they'd figure it out, was complete, safe, and ready for whatever came next. The wedding planning began immediately, though planning was perhaps too generous a term for Isabella's approach. She attacked it like a hostile takeover, with spreadsheets and color-coded timelines that made Marcus giggle every time he saw them spread across the dining table. We could just go to City Hall, Ethan suggested one evening, watching her reconcile vendor quotes with the intensity she'd once reserved for billion-dollar mergers. Absolutely not, Isabella said without looking up. Marcus wants to be ring bearer and best man. Baby Ethan needs to be in a tiny tuxedo. We're doing this properly. Properly meaning a 1,000-person event at the plaza? She finally looked at him, and he saw the vulnerability beneath the CEO exterior. Properly meaning our families, the one we've made, celebrating us. Maybe 50 people. Maybe here in Switzerland, where we became us. The way she said it, soft and uncertain, made him round the table to kiss her. That sounds perfect. But even as they planned their future, the past wasn't quite done with them. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Ethan was teaching Marcus long division and Isabella was in a video conference with potential investors for their new company. Mr. Ward? This is Director Harrison from the FBI. We need to discuss Victor Reeves. Ethan's stomach dropped. Did he escape? No, sir. He's dead. Suicide in his cell last night, but he left something for you. A letter and a laptop with files we think you need to see. The room seemed to tilt. Victor, broken and defeated Victor, had taken the final escape route. Despite everything, Ethan felt a wave of complicated grief. There, but for the grace of God and different choices went he. What kind of files? Evidence, Mr. Ward. Victor was many things, but he was also meticulous. He documented everything, every member of the displaced, their plans, their contacts. But more importantly, he had files on Nexus, on several tech companies, actually. Illegal surveillance, insider trading, things that go way beyond his group's activities. Isabella had finished her call and moved closer, concern etched on her face. Ethan put the phone on speaker. He was trying to expose corporate corruption. In his twisted way, yes. He wrote that if he couldn't tear down the system from outside, maybe the truth could destroy it from within. Mr. Ward, Ms. Grant, some of these files implicate board members at Nexus, people you know. Isabella went pale. Who? I can't discuss details over the phone. But we need you back in New York, both of you. You're not suspects, but we need your help understanding these documents. After the call, they sat in stunned silence while Marcus, sensing the mood, quietly took baby Ethan to the playroom. He documented everything, Isabella said finally. If there's really corruption in my company, my father's company, we'll handle it, Ethan said firmly. Together. This could destroy Nexus. Everything my father built, everything I've worked for. Or it could save it, cut out the cancer before it spreads further. She looked at him with those green eyes that had first captured him in a conference room that felt like a lifetime ago. When did you become the optimist in this relationship? When you showed me I had something worth being optimistic about. The flight back to New York felt like traveling backward through time. Marcus pressed against the window, pointing out landmarks he remembered, while baby Ethan slept peacefully in Isabella's arms. But Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept checking her phone for updates from the board. They were met at JFK by a full FBI escort, which thrilled Marcus and terrified Ethan in equal measure. The safe house they were taken to was nothing like the Swiss embassy, just a nondescript apartment in Queens that could have belonged to anyone. The files are extensive, Director Harrison explained, spreading documents across a conference table they'd set up in the living room. Victor had access to executive communications going back years. He installed keystroke loggers, hidden cameras, even tapped into private phone lines. That's illegal, Isabella said. Highly. But so is what he uncovered. Harrison pulled out a specific folder. 3 members of your board have been selling insider information to competitors. Your CFO has been siphoning funds through shell companies. And your head of security, the one you trusted with your family's safety, has been taking bribes to look the other way on industrial espionage. Isabella sank into a chair like her strings had been cut. David Pearson? He's been with the company for 15 years. He was at my father's funeral. Sometimes the longest relationships hide the deepest betrayals, Harrison said gently. The question now is what you want to do about it. What are our options? We build a case, arrest them all simultaneously. The press will have a field day, stock prices will tank, but Nexus survives. Cleaner, maybe smaller, but honest. Or, Ethan asked, knowing there was always another option. Or Ms. Grant works with us to gather additional evidence. Wears a wire, gets confessions, helps us understand the full scope of the corruption. Absolutely not, Ethan said immediately. She's been through enough danger. I'll do it, Isabella said quietly. Isabella, my father built Nexus to change the world, to make technology that helps people. These people perverted that vision for profit. I'll do whatever it takes to clean house. Marcus wandered in then, baby Ethan in his arms, with surprising competence for a 7-year-old. Why does everyone look sad? Did something bad happen? Just grown-up work stuff, buddy, Ethan said, but Marcus was already reading the room with the perception children developed when their worlds kept shifting. Someone was mean to Isabella's company. Something like that. Marcus considered this, then walked over to Isabella and carefully placed baby Ethan in her arms. When kids are mean at school, Ms. Peterson says we have to stand up to them, even if it's scary. Your teacher sounds smart, Isabella said, kissing the top of his head. She is. She also says bullies are usually just scared of something themselves. Marcus looked thoughtful. Maybe the mean people at your company are scared too. Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought for what felt like the 100th time since this all began. The operation took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of Isabella wearing wires to board meetings, of pretending everything was normal while gathering evidence of extraordinary betrayal. Ethan watched her come home each night, exhausted and heartsick, peeling off the recording equipment like it was burning her skin. David offered to increase security for the wedding today, she said one night, laughing bitterly. He actually looked me in the eye and promised to keep our family safe while knowing he'd been selling our secrets to competitors. It's almost over, Ethan promised, holding her while she cried angry tears into his shoulder. Is it? How do I ever trust anyone again after this? How do I know who's real and who's just waiting for their chance to profit off my trust? You trust us, Marcus said from the doorway, where he'd appeared like a little ghost. Me and Dad and baby Ethan, we're real. Isabella held out her arms, and Marcus ran into them. You're the realest things in my life, she agreed. The arrests happened on a Thursday. Synchronized raids at homes and offices, federal agents sweeping through Nexus like avenging angels. Ethan watched from their apartment as the news broke, Isabella's hand gripped tight in his. Corruption scandal. Rocks Nexus Technologies. CEO. Isabella Grant exposed own board's crimes. The billionaire who chose justice over profit. They're making me sound heroic, Isabella said flatly. I'm not heroic. I'm just angry. Anger channeled into justice is its own kind of heroism, Ethan pointed out. The phone rang constantly. Reporters, board members, investors, all wanting statements, reassurances, explanations. Isabella ignored them all until one call made her freeze. "It's James Liu," she said, staring at the screen. "He's technically acting CEO now." "Answer it," Ethan encouraged. "Isabella." James's voice was warm when she put him on speaker. "I wanted you to know the remaining board voted unanimously. We want you back. Not in a year, not after things calm down. Now. Nexus needs you. I resigned, and we're refusing to accept it. The company needs leadership that chose integrity over easy profits. It needs you." Isabella looked at Ethan, a question in her eyes. "What about our company?" he asked. "Ward Grant Technologies?" "Why not both?" James suggested. "Nexus could be your first major investor. Partnership, not employment. You'd have a seat on the board, consulting role, but your focus would be on building something new. Best of both worlds." "I need to think about it," Isabella said. "Of course. But Isabella, your father would be proud. You saved his company's soul." After James hung up, they sat in the gathering darkness, baby Ethan babbling in his high chair while Marcus built elaborate block towers on the floor. "We could stay," Isabella said tentatively. "New York is home. The boys have roots here." "Or we could go back to Switzerland," Ethan countered. "Fresh start, clean slate." "Or," Marcus interrupted, not looking up from his blocks, "we could do both. Like that man said, best of both worlds." "What do you mean, buddy?" "Summer in Switzerland, school year in New York. Like Billy from my class, his parents are divorced, so he has 2 houses. Except ours would be because we want to, not because we have to." Isabella and Ethan exchanged amazed looks over his head. Sometimes the simplest solutions came from the smallest voices. "That's actually brilliant," Isabella said. "I know," Marcus said matter-of-factly. "I'm very smart. Dad says I get it from Mom. Both moms." The casual way he included Isabella in that statement made her eyes well up. She'd become Mom without ceremony or declaration, just through presence and persistence and love. The wedding happened 6 weeks later, on a perfect October day in Central Park. Not the grand affair Isabella had initially planned, but something better, intimate, honest, real. Marcus stood as best man and ring bearer, taking his duties so seriously that he practiced his walk for hours. Baby Ethan, in his tiny tuxedo, was carried down the aisle by Mrs. Chen, their former neighbor, who'd become like a grandmother to both boys. "You sure about this?" Ethan asked Isabella as they prepared to walk out together, breaking tradition because nothing about their relationship had ever been traditional. "I've never been sure of anything in my life," she said, then laughed. "Except maybe that first job offer. I knew you were going to change everything the moment you corrected my financial projections." "You changed everything," he corrected. "I was just trying to keep up." The ceremony was simple, officiated by a judge who'd known Isabella's father. But it was Marcus who stole the show, insisting on making a speech he'd written himself. "When my first mom went to heaven, I thought we'd be sad forever," he read from his carefully printed notes. "But Dad said hearts are like houses. They can always build new rooms. Isabella and baby Ethan aren't replacing anyone. They're just new rooms in our heart house. And now we have so many rooms, we'll never run out of space for love." There wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering. Even Director Harrison, who'd come as a guest after everything they'd been through together, was discreetly wiping his cheeks. Richard Blackwood didn't attend, but he sent a gift, a photo album filled with pictures of Isabella's parents he'd somehow acquired, moments she'd never seen, her history returned to her. The note simply said, "For your children to know where they came from. All my best, R." As they exchanged rings, Ethan thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. A janitor and a billionaire, a widower and a single mother, 2 broken people who'd built something whole from the pieces. "You may kiss," the judge began, but Isabella was already pulling Ethan close, kissing him like they were alone in the world instead of surrounded by everyone they loved. "Gross!" Marcus shouted cheerfully, making everyone laugh. Later, at the small reception at Isabella's, penthouse, Ethan found a moment of quiet on the balcony. The city sprawled below, lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. He thought about Sarah, hoping she'd approve of this new life he'd built. Somehow, he thought she would. She'd always said he was stronger than he knew. "There you are," Isabella said, joining him, baby Ethan in her arms and Marcus trailing behind with cake on his face. "We were looking for you." "Just thinking." "About?" "About how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things. If Sarah hadn't died, if I hadn't taken that janitor job, if there hadn't been a fire that night, we never would have found each other," Isabella finished. "It seems wrong to be grateful for tragedy." "Not grateful for the tragedy," Isabella corrected. "Grateful for the strength we found because of it. For the choice to keep going when stopping would have been easier." Marcus tugged on Ethan's jacket. "Dad, baby Ethan said his first word." "He's only 8 months old, buddy." "But he did." "Listen." Marcus leaned close to the baby. "Say it again, little brother." Baby Ethan looked at Marcus with adoration, then opened his mouth and clearly said, "Mar." "He's trying to say Marcus," Marcus exclaimed, delighted. "I'm his first word." "Actually," Isabella said with a smile, "I think he's saying more. He does it every time he finishes his bottle." "I'm choosing to believe it's Marcus," Ethan said, ruffling his son's hair. "Better story." "The best stories are the ones we choose to believe," Isabella agreed, leaning into him as they watched the city lights come alive. 6 months later, Ward Grant Technologies, they'd literally flipped a coin, launched its first product, an AI system designed not to replace human workers, but to enhance their capabilities, making every employee as valuable as a CEO. The launch event was held in the same conference room where Ethan had first corrected Isabella's projections, now transformed into their company's headquarters. 2 years ago, a janitor saved my life, Isabella said in her keynote speech, Ethan beside her on stage, not just from a bullet, but from a narrow view of what success looked like. He showed me that brilliance exists at every level of society, waiting for opportunity. Ward Grant Technologies isn't just about artificial intelligence. It's about augmented humanity, about ensuring technology elevates everyone, not just the privileged few. The crowd erupted in applause, but Ethan barely heard it. He was watching Marcus in the front row, holding baby Ethan, now walking but still called baby Ethan, both boys wearing matching "My Parents Are Geniuses" t-shirts that Mrs. Chen had made. "Your turn," Isabella whispered, stepping back. Ethan approached the microphone, still uncomfortable with public speaking, but knowing this message mattered. "Every person in this room has potential beyond their current circumstances," he began. "I know because I've been the invisible one, the one whose ideas didn't matter because of my job title. Technology should be a ladder, not a wall. What we're launching today isn't just software, it's possibility, it's hope. It's a chance for every janitor to become a CEO, and for every CEO to remember they're human." The demo that followed was flawless. The system worked exactly as promised, turning entry-level employees into strategic thinkers, giving them tools previously reserved for the highest levels of management. Orders poured in before they even left the stage. "We did it," Isabella breathed as they finally escaped to their office. "You did it," Ethan corrected. "We did it," Marcus said firmly from the doorway, baby Ethan toddling beside him. "Family means we all did it together." And standing there in the office that had once been cleaned by a grieving widower, now run by a family built from loss and love and choice, Ethan understood that Marcus was right. They had all done it together. Every tear, every triumph, every moment of terror and joy had led to this, not an ending, but a beginning. "What's next?" Isabella asked, pulling up their business plan on the smartboard. "Everything," Ethan said, lifting baby Ethan onto his shoulders while Marcus grabbed the digital pen to add his own ideas to their plan. "Absolutely everything." Through the window, Manhattan stretched out in all its impossible glory, a city of dreams and heartbreak and endless possibility. Somewhere out there, another janitor was pushing a cart through empty offices, brilliant and invisible. Somewhere, another single parent was choosing between dignity and survival. Somewhere, another family was being born from circumstances no one would choose but everyone could overcome. "Dad?" Marcus asked, adding surprisingly complex diagrams to their business plan. "Are we rich now?" Ethan looked at Isabella, at baby Ethan, at the ring on his finger and the company they'd built and the future spreading before them like a promise. "Yeah, buddy," he said, "we're the richest people in the world." "Cool," Marcus said, then went back to his drawing. "Can we still have pizza for dinner?" They laughed, all of them, the sound filling the office that had witnessed so much transformation. And as the sun set over the city that had brought them together, the Ward Grant family, they'd decided to hyphenate after all, stood ready for whatever came next, knowing that together they could handle anything. Even pizza negotiations with a 7-year-old genius. The future stretched before them, bright and uncertain and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. They'd found each other in the most unlikely way, built love from loss, created family from chance and choice and sheer determination. And this, Ethan thought, as Isabella kissed his cheek, and baby Ethan grabbed his nose and Marcus explained his revolutionary idea for pizza delivery drones, this was what happily ever after really looked like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and messy and wonderful in theirs. The janitor who'd become a CEO, the billionaire who'd learned to trust, the boy who'd gained a mother and brother, the baby who'd never know a world without all of them together. Their story had begun with a fire and a gunshot, with terror and courage and impossible choices. But it continued with this: ordinary moments made extraordinary by the simple fact that they were sharing them. And somewhere in the city below, Victor Reeves's laptop sat in an FBI evidence locker, its secrets exposed, its purpose served. He'd been wrong about many things, but he'd been right about one. Sometimes the system was broken. The difference was, people like Ethan and Isabella weren't trying to tear it down. They were building something better. One algorithm, one family, one choice at a time.